Okay, so let's begin. Because this is for final exam preparation, right? So we will have the video shared, and on Canvas Dynamic Syllabus, this slide is already shared with you guys, okay? And so most of the content that you will see in the final exam, vast majority should be already contained in this slide, okay? And we have 65 slides, so we will not wait, okay? We will just begin. And for the final exam, it will be totally auto-graded because after Friday, we only have 2 days before we can finalize the grade. Okay, we don't have time to manually grade and adjust. Okay, so maybe on Monday or during weekend, once you please take a look at your grade and let us know if there's any problems. We still have like the weekend to adjust. Okay. And so you should already see the final exam entry on Canvas. Okay, so it's a timed exam for 2 hours. Whenever you start your exam, okay, after 2 hours it will end. So be sure you find the best 2-hour time to take the exam. The exam will be clustered, so you can take any time on Thursday and Friday of next week. Okay, a lot of students just send an email to me saying that you know, the exam time is not suitable for them, but just to take a close look at the exam configuration. Okay, anytime on Tuesday and Friday of next week, you can take exam. Okay, so that's not an excuse. We already make things a lot easier for you guys. Okay, I just now I get another email saying that there's a graduation's you know, right, commencement on Friday. Right, we are not taking that time slot. Okay, anytime on Thursday and Friday you can take exam. But once you begin, only 2 hours, okay? Counts down in 2 hours. Without DSS time accommodation, okay? If you are eligible for this time accommodation, just remind me, okay? Then I will configure the additional time for you in the Canvas. Okay, let's begin. So we have the self-learning, right? So, and this is on the bridge, right? So the switch is the same, okay? So we might have a question ask you about, let's say you have a bunch of bridges connected, right? So basically on each side of the bridge, in switch it's special, right? On each side of the bridge, you will see, you know, shared media kind of structure, right? You will have multiple computers. In here, in this example, of switch, we only have one computer on each port, okay? Which is a special case, right? And then we will ask you to learn some records in the table, right? So as we mentioned earlier, so we will have a forwarding table, okay? And let's say if you have A send a message, then port 1A will be there, okay? And so this is basically the logic, right? If you already know the record, you will just send it directly to that port, okay? If you don't know, you will flood to everyone, right? So in this example, once you arrive at 1, the switch, the bridge will learn this, right? And then it doesn't know where the destination to A prime is, right? So it will forward to everyone on the other ports, okay? And after that, let's say the destination A prime get the message to send back, then, you know, the bridge or the switch will learn that A prime bound, okay? We will have, let's say, a list of actions, okay? And actually bridge is more complicated, right? Because on each subnetwork, you may have more than one computer, okay? So you can take a look at how this thing is going, right? So if we want to combine switches together, it's the same story, okay? Right? If you combine switches together, then here, you know, how you can learn from each other. So we will have an example with bridges, okay? Not a 2-level switch, okay? But it's again the self-learning, right? So if you send from one to the other, and we have some examples, right? B want to send to F, and H want to send to A, etc., right? And after a few operations, what will be the content of each forwarding table in the bridge, for example, in the final exam, okay? So be sure to practice a little bit and understand how things are working in this scenario. Okay, so this is the first thing you might want to know, right? And so this is around the midterm, right? We have this thing, but I think we didn't have a question test this. So in the final exam, we'll test you on that. Okay, the self-learning of the port and the host mapping. Okay, and then we move to, you know, the previous one is in the data link layer, right? So we also have the network layer, and we know that in the network layer we have so-called autonomous system, right? AS. Okay, so we have the intra-domain routing and the inter-domain routing. Okay, So we talked about the 3 protocols, right? RIP, OSPF, and BGP. You need to know these things, okay? Right, and you need to know that RIP and OSPF are for intra-domain routing within AS, and intra-domain routing is only using BGP. Everyone is using BGP for routing between AS, okay? So there are 2 levels, right? The first level is intra-domain routing using within an AS, right? And you need to know that RIP is using distance vector, okay, algorithm, and OSPF is using link state algorithm. So distance vector is actually the Bellman-Ford algorithm, right? So, and the link state is using the Dijkstra algorithm. Okay, you need to be aware of those things, right? And so for the interdomain routing, we are using BGP, right? So the de facto standard right now is BGP4. Okay, you need to know about these 2 things. And here's an AS example. You know, within an AS, you have interior routers that are running OSPF, for example, and the border gateway router is running the BGP. Okay. And so, as we said, we have 2 categories of algorithms. One is distance vector, right, as used by RIP. Okay. And we also have the path vector by BGP, right? So they are kind of similar. Okay, so you need to know the how this algorithm works, right? So it waits for changes in the adjacent links, right, in its neighborhood. It can only detect changes in the neighborhood, and once there's some change, you need to trigger the change, right, to propagate to neighbors. So you need to recompute the distance table, and if any cost path is changed, you need to notify neighbors, and neighbors will then update their own table and reflect the change. Okay. And because this distance vector algorithm is neighbor by neighbor propagation, we have so-called a count to infinity problem, where if you have a bad message, right, so go from 4 to 60, what you will have is that you will have, we know that A to C, right, can go through B5, right, so then add another 1 will go to C. This is because, you are not doing poison the reverse. You can go from where you were routed originally. So you should not go from where if this link is increased, you should not go from there. Okay, for example, if you see A, this is via B, right? Via B, A to C via B, but it's exactly this link that is increased, right? You are not aware of that, right? So that entry, you still reuse the outdated entry from the other node in the distance vector. Okay, then you will have this kind of situation goes on slowly all the way till you converge to 60. Okay, so this is bad news travel slowly. This only holds for the distance vector or path vector algorithm. Okay, like RIP and BGP. Okay, this does not hold in the OSPF, like the link state algorithm. Okay, keep that in mind. If we ask you a question like for the link state algorithm, right, OSPF will have this count to infinity problem, right? Then you should answer false. Okay, we'll have a bunch of true-false questions, because in the final exam we will have 30 something questions. Okay, some are very simple, just true or false. You can probably, if you have the concept, you can finish that in maybe 10 seconds. Right? Other questions will ask you to fill in something. Right? You need to have a scratch paper. You do some calculation and fill in the result into the blanks. Okay, for those questions you need to spare some time. Right, and a solution to that is pointing the reverse, right? So for example, if you have 60, right? So then when you compute it, you directly say, I should go not route through B, right? If you don't route through B, right? So then immediately, C will not route through AB, right? 61, right? Because AB was outdated. So C will route through 50, okay? Right, so directly. Okay. And then this will address this problem. So poison reverse saying, hey, if you go from another previous path, right? But that one is actually who notify you, hey, there's a change in its cost, right? So then you don't route through it. Okay? And keep in mind, we are still in the distance vector scenario. Okay, so if we talk about link state routing, there's no bad news travel slow issue. Okay, it's super fast. The reason is because every node needs to tell others about the adjacent scenario of the cost, right? So and then this information is, let's say, starting from every node, it floods this information about this two edge costs to everyone else. And this is also done for other nodes. Okay? Basically, every node has an entire cost scenario of the entire network. Basically, everyone knows the big picture. Okay. So you can use Dijkstra's algorithm to compute the shortest path, right? So because everyone knows every address path, right, reported by every router, okay? Then you can just compute the short path. And one important thing you need to know is that how to compute the Dijkstra algorithm, right? So in this example, you will maintain such a table, right? And we may give you in the final exam another graph, okay? And with the different weights and the topology, right? You should be able to repeat this process on a scratch paper and then decide who is the next shortest one and then decide the order, okay? And then you can fill in the order. Okay, so here, for example, if you start from A, right, you will know the other, like E is not reachable, okay, infinity. But JSON ones, you already have the edge, okay? And then among those, you will choose the shortest distance, okay, right? And you can see, hey, among non-A, right, because this is starting from A, and other nodes are not selected finally. And this is 2, 5, 1. We should naturally choose 1 as the next one, D, okay? And then D is mask, basically. We'll select the next one from B, C, E, F, okay? But because if we choose D, right, we choose D, our distance to, let me see, our distance to C is shrink. Originally, if you only have A, then the distance 5, okay? Choose D, then you can go from 1 plus 3, right? So you will reduce this cost to 4, okay? And you repeat this process, I will not repeat, right? Then the next smallest one is E, and then B, and C. So we will ask you a question how this is computed. You should know that the order is D, E, B, C, right? And we will have blank for you to fill in, okay? And after that, you can see this is actually shortest path tree, right? So this basically defines a router. Okay, so let me see whether we have that. A routing table, right? So for example, we will have a routing table saying that, hey, if you want to route from A to E, right? So what will be in the routing table D? Or in the routing table of A, what will be the entry there? The entry will say, hey, the next hop is D, right? And the distance to E is 2, okay? So you need to be aware of this. Right? So you can configure this A's routing table because A has the entire picture, right? And then you on the scratch paper, you should be able to write these links, and then you have the idea what's happening, right? In the canvas, right? So you can only fill in those entries, okay? And then you have this on the scratch paper, you will easily know the selected links, right? And then you will configure the forwarding table entry. Right? For example, if A want to go to C, right? If we want to go to C, who's the next hop? The next, if you look at this link, the next of D, and the cost is 111. Okay, so you will fill in a routing table here. Okay, so in the final exam, we will have a question similar to this, but we will ask you to fill in these and fill in the routing table of A based on the short path result. So you need to pictorially have this tree there. Okay, just to figure out how this is. Okay, and then you should be fine. Next is the inter-domain routing. Right? So inter-domain routing is for global connectivity. So everyone should speak the same language, which is BGP, right? And you need to know that BGP is a path vector protocol, right? You have the AS path. Okay, so this is kind of similar to distance vector, but we have the path. Okay, we also record the path, not just the distance. And so you need to know that BGP protocol is a border gateway protocol, okay? And it's policy-based, right? And it's still like a distance vector, it's running the Bellman-Ford path, path vector, right? Bellman-Ford algorithm, okay? And this is, there's a concept of policy, which is driven by economics. Basically, you might not take the shortest path because like these two, routers are not pairing with each other, right? So here's a route selection priority, right? So firstly, they have a local preference table, okay, at each router, which routes I prefer, okay? And then you will have the other cost, right? So whether it's shortest, right? So basically, routing table goes first, okay? And you have the other ones, like we will see some examples later, okay? So you have the hot potato routing, and we do have a question asking about hot potato routing. Okay, we will have another slide coming, okay? And if all these don't hold, then you just find break tie by smaller route ID. Okay, because you want a unique route. You don't want the route there's a tie, then you sometimes take this route, sometimes take that route. Okay, you still want stableness. You need to break the tie. So here, keep in mind that BGP, right? So the path is an AS path, right? Autonomous, system, right? So AS path. Okay, it's not the entire path. Okay, it doesn't count anything inside the autonomous system. Okay, but here you can see that, for example, if you count the number of passes, right? Here it's 4 hops, right? 4 AS. It seems like this is shorter because there are so many links on the other AS, but there are only 2 AS. Okay, go through here and then reach the destination. So actually, we will take this path, not this path, even though there are only 4 hops on the left. Okay, maybe all these are border gateway routers. These are interior routers. Okay, but actually, we will take the right path. The reason is because if you look at here, the shortest AS path, not the shortest path. Okay, keep that in mind. And you will find an example in the exam where you will find some interior router and some external router. And you need to be aware of the difference, okay? Another important thing is called a hot potato routing. We will have a question in the final exam on that, okay? So here's an example, right? So this is an extreme example. In the exam, we may not have such extreme long link of AS, okay? So here we are saying that, hey, here you have 3 hops, 1, 2, 3, okay? And you also have 5 hops outside, right? So which one will you prefer? It seems that you should prefer the short path, right? But actually, in reality, we take this path. So the reason is very simple, right? The packet, like a hot potato, is inside your AS, right? For one link, okay? While here you have 2 links. You also allocate another result, right? To help you, okay? So you have no intention to hold it for longer, okay? Even though this will serve the service better, but you want to utilize, because you paid maybe others, right? So you want to use the backbone to help you, right? Okay, even though it will be a little bit smaller, you don't want to use your results too much, right? If you can use $1, you don't want to use $2, even though maybe this will give you short latencies. Okay, so this is called a hot potato routing. If I can throw away the potato to somebody else to help me, I throw away. It's too hot. Okay, I don't want to hold it for 2 seconds. I just want to hold 1 second and throw to the closest border gateway router. Okay. So we'll have an example like that. Okay, you need to be aware, hey, this is testing you hot potato routing, and answer accordingly. And there's also importing rules where you need to know that we have different rules, right? But you don't get all the rules to everyone else. Okay? The export rules, you just share certain export rules with us. Okay? All right, next is the stable passes problem. Okay, where we are looking at how to compute a stable path. Okay, so this is for BGP, right? For the SPF, those kind of protocol, we are only computing shorter paths. But for BGP, we want to the difference that each node has a preference list. Okay, so you want to so in our exam we will have this example. Okay, similar example. Okay, where each node will give you a preference list of how the routes they want to take. For example, if I can take 210, I will not take 20 because I prefer 210. But what if 1 is not going to 0? Right? 1 is taking 130. Then okay, I cannot take this path because 1 will not directly take 10. I have to take the other one directly connect to 0. Okay, yeah. So this is a set of permitted paths from each node to the origin. Okay, the permitted means if 1 is taking 130, then you cannot take 10. Right? 1 will not directly take 10. Okay, then it's not permitted. Right? You have to go to the second person. Right? So this is called a stable path problem. You want to find the most preferred one as top as possible, but doesn't break doesn't force others to take a route that it's not taking. Okay. So let me see. So here's an example. Right. Hey, if 3 start to choose, the first one prefer the 30, so this link will be chosen. Okay. And then 1 is happy, right? 1303 is already connected. Okay. And then 2 is choosing, but hey, 210 is not possible, right? Because 10 is not activated. Okay, 130. So 2 has to look at the second one, it prefers, so it will be 20. Okay. And then 4 will take a 420 because 20 already selected. So 420 is okay. Right. So, and then 5 want to take, right? So 5 find, hey, I only allow 5210. Then because 2 is already treating 20, it's not going through 1, right? 210. Then 5 can never be served, right? Then we have a 5 that is not able to run. Okay. So here's a solution to not need to use a shortest path. Okay. So here we have a simple, like a ideal example, right? So if 1, 0, then we choose this, 2, 0, or 3, 0, and 4, 3, 0. Okay, it can all be satisfied. This is called a stable scenario, right? So we call a good gadget. Okay. And what if we swap them, right? So originally it's 4, 3, 0 and 4, 2, 0. Now if we change to 4, 2, 0 and 4, 3, 0, what will happen? Right. So we cannot take. So here you can see here we can take 4, 2, 0. So it's still okay, right? So no matter how this each node can get its preferred route. Okay, it's a stable topology. So we'll give you such a topology and ask you to analyze and see whether it's stable or not, right? So you just select every node one by one and just choose a preferred one. If it's viable, if not viable, you go to the next route, okay? And finally, you see whether it can be stable. If there's like a circular change, like get back to the original case again, then it's unstable. Right? Now, so here, even here is another good gadget, right? So we call it still good, but not everyone is choosing the best one they want. Okay, not the top one. So for example, here we can choose 3, 0, and this is, you see 3, 1, 0 is preferred now. Okay, and unlike the prior example. Okay, and then here 4, 3, 0, they are all okay. Right? And 2 want to choose 2, 1, 0 first, right? But unfortunately, 1 is not taking 1, 0, it's taking 1, 3, 0. So it has to take the second one. Okay, 2, 0. It's fine. So this is still a good gadget because it's stable, right? But it's not not everyone is taking the preferred one. So even though 2 is not taking 2, 1, 0, which is preferred over 2, 0, this is still okay. Okay, this is called a good gadget. You need to understand the terminology with good gadget. It doesn't require everyone to take the most preferred route. Okay. And there's also the bad gadgets, right? So we can give you another scenario like similar to this, right? Maybe we will take a different topology and a different list, preference list. Okay. So here's a bad gadget because let's say how you derive this. We start from any node. Let's say we start like 2 choosing, right? Because 1, 0 is not activated yet, we have to choose 2, 0. Okay. And then we look at another 4, right? Randomly pick a window. Let's say 4. 4, 2, 0 is fine. Okay. And then we take a look at this 3, right? 3 can take the 3, 4, 2, 0. And then we can take this 1 to select, right? 1 is taking 1, 0 because 1, 3, 0 is not activated. 3, 0 is not activated. And then you need to take another round of each node and see whether someone can improve its route, right? So 2 will look at, hey, 2, 1, 0 is not activated, right? So 2 will change this to 2, 1, 0. It can promote its path, okay? And then you will take a look at whether the rest will hold, right? So for example, for this node, this 4, 2, 0, 2, 0 is no longer valid, so it's gone, okay? Similarly, this is gone because 2, 0 is gone. So 3 will have to choose 3, 0, okay? And once 3, 0 is chosen, right? Now if you take a look at this one node, right? It has 1, 3, 0 is preferred 1, 0, 1, 0. 1 will go through 1, 3, 0, okay? And finally, 4 will also go to 4, 3, 0 because these are 3, 0 activated, okay? 4, 2, 0 is preferred, but 2, 0 is no longer activated because 2 choose to use a preferred path, 2, 1, 0, okay? And now you can take a look at whether there's some other way to invalidate some of the paths, right? So if you look at here, right, 2, 1, 0 is no longer valid because 1 choose 1, 3, 0, okay? This will cause 2, 1, 0 to choose 2, 0, right? Okay? And what will cause the problem, right? So you can see 2, 0 chosen, then 4 will try to promote to 2, 4, 2, 0, right? So, and it will take this, okay? And then, once this is preferred, 4, 2, 0 established, you will choose 3, 4, 2, 0 again, okay? And you see this whole process is oscillating again, okay? 1, 0, because 1, 3, 0 is no longer active. And this can continue, right? If you try many rounds and you find, hey, you get to where a scenario that you have before, this is a bad guidance, okay? It will oscillate like forever, which means, your route is always changing. Sometimes you take this one, sometimes you take this one. Okay. Any questions? Again, so in the exam, we will just give you a topology and a local list. These analysis, you have to do it on your own. Okay. So you have to have a scratch paper and do some calculation and understand what it will be stable. All right, so next we move to the transport layer, right? Previously we are in the network layer, got inter-domain and intra-domain routing, right? And especially we'll focus on TCP, which is really we spend a lot of lectures on that, right? So firstly, you need to know a concept called piggybacking, right? So piggybacking. So what does that mean, right? So for example, you have two streams, right? One stream is from client to server, right? The sequence number starts from 1, right? And the server, when you establish the three-way handshake, the server chooses the random starting sequence number as 23. Then what you do is, for example, you can send a byte of 1460 bytes, right? So then your sequence number will be increased to 1461, right? But for the server side, it should acknowledge that your next byte should be 1461, okay? So what it would do is, this is called a piggyback message, right? So you need to understand this concept, right? So here we actually have two streams. One stream is this, where we are at this, right? So we will acknowledge back with this number. Say, hey, from client to server, the next one I expect is this. So this is acknowledgement message. But in the meanwhile, the server also has something to send to you, right? So server can send from 23, we will send so many bytes. So your acknowledgement number will be elevated to here. So this is along this direction, okay? So if you look at the server, it's piggybacking the message, right? So in the meanwhile, when you are sending this amount of data to the client, you're acknowledging the client's so many data to you, okay? So actually there are two independent messages. One is data sending, one is acknowledging, okay? But we call it piggybacking because we can merge them into one message, okay? So you need to be aware of this. And so you need to be aware that, a piggyback message, we have acknowledge number and we have a sequence number. They are different, okay? They are for two different directions, okay? So they can be totally different. If we ask the question and you compute something like, hey, plus this, it should be 21, like 24 or something, right? So this is irrelevant, because these two numbers can be irrelevant, okay? Each side of connection can send and receive, okay? And they have different numbers on each direction. Right, so something like this. And this piggyback message idea has actually been used also in through handshake, as we said. Right, synchronize bit, and then synchronous ACK, this is piggyback, okay? And then ACK back, right? So you need to be aware that through handshake is also using this idea, right? So if sequence plus 1 means I expect the next byte to be plus 1, okay? So here you can see the the packet send versus packet receive, right? So if you send something, sequence number 23, right? 23 here. Let me change it to maybe you can use this. Sequence number 23. Okay. Then when you reach there, right? So let's say we send 200 bytes. Then it should be 223, right? Acknowledge back when you receive it. Okay. But in the meanwhile, you also have a sequence number from the receiver, maybe starting from 1000. Okay. So these two can be totally irrelevant. Okay? You need to be aware of the header information and of the concept. Okay? Here is just a description of the content. Right? So one is sequence number, one is acknowledgement number. You can see this acknowledgement number is where you receive. Right? The sequence number is for the server to the client, or the other direction. They can be different. Okay. And these are just for piggyback message. Right? And you also have a window in TCP where you can continue to send, but you have a window size. Right? We will talk about the window size later. This is the advertised window, right? So for flow control. Okay. Next, we have the flow control, right? So flow control is, let's say, to control the speed that the sender can transmit, right? Because if your sender sends too fast, the receiver, an IC card cannot receive so many messages, or because it's receiving also from many other people, right? So it cannot allocate all the bandwidth to you to receive. Right? So, but importantly, why we need this field, right? Keep sending back this field when received, right? So because it will be changing, right? So receiver buffers may change over time. Okay. So basically, the TCP in the sliding window method, where receiver will send back the advertised window. So how will the advertised window be increased, right? Because when the sender transmits in bytes, right? So you will acknowledge back, right? So each acknowledge means, hey, it's properly received. Receiver is fine, right? You increase by 1 is fine. So the receiver window will move forward after each acknowledgement. Okay. Whenever I receive another one and I acknowledge, I increase my window by 1. Okay. So this is very important. Right? So we may have a question ask you, hey, the flow controls, this window size is fixed throughout the TCP connection. It's wrong. Okay? It will increase. Okay. But when you don't have the ACK, or it will adjust basically, may change over time. Bear that in mind. Okay. All right. So we also have a concept RTO, which is the retransmission timeout. So basically, we have a timeout threshold, right? And for example, if you send something and the packet lost, right? So after a timeout, the sender will say, hey, it should definitely be lost. And you will try, you send the data, right? And then the receiver will acknowledge back. Okay. So, but there's another case where initially you send something, but acknowledge back at round trip time. But fortunately, your threshold is not long enough, right? And you send again, right? So this is not good, right? Because, it's already sending back, but you think it's not received. Okay? If it's too small, then you will be sending forever because you can never receive the packet within the RTO. Okay, so that's the last. So in order to avoid this case, actually, we need to estimate the round trip time. Okay, the RTO is set to be twice the round trip time. Okay, RTO is set to be twice the round trip time. So how do we estimate the RTO? Okay, we are using a smoothing over time, right? So called a moving average, right? So let's assume you already have an RTT round trip time estimation, right? And then you next time you get another sample, right? So you know, hey, how long to get back, okay, from a sending time, because you know the sender will buffer and have a counter to count how many times it passed in order to record the timeout, right? So you will have the sample anyway, right? So and then you will update by a smoothing factor, right? And the smoothing factor could be large, okay, which means we will out of older one place a bigger impact. A new one, maybe you have a sudden surge of the traffic and then immediately come down. Right? So maybe it will increase the overall new RTT a little bit, but will not suddenly increase like crazy. Okay, right. Otherwise it will frustrate a lot. Okay, so maybe we will ask you a question: if a new sample is super long, let's say 1 second, right? Well, this is maybe 10 milliseconds usually round trip time. Then will the timeout threshold be suddenly boosted to 1 second or even 2 seconds? Right. The answer is no, because we have a smoothing effect. Right. So keep that in mind. And again, the sampling is only considering successful retransmission. We are not considering the retransmission. Okay, because if you have a retransmission, there's an ambiguity. Okay, here's an ambiguity case, right? So you don't know whether the sample. This is true round trip time, but if your RTO is too small, then you will have the second packet retransmission and the first acknowledge. You think the time in between them is something that it's become reasonably short. Okay, so for that purpose, we ignore such retransmission segments. We only consider successful, within RTO if you have a sample. Then you consider adjust the time using this smoothing function. Okay, using this function. We are super fast. Okay, just make sure you go through the slide offline and also watch the video. Okay, and we don't have much time because. Right. So let me see what's this slide about. Am I repeating this slide? Okay. Next is a concept called checksum. Right. So TCP, UDP, IP all have the checksum field like here. Okay, you can see this here. Right. So the checksum is using so-called Wins complement algorithm. Right. So what it does is this. Right? So for example, you have actually the actual number of 16 bits, right, as you have seen in the midterm, okay? But we are using a simplified notation, like assume that there's only 4 bits, right? So then you do a sum over these 4 bits, okay? So you will get 1 plus 0, 1. 1 plus 1 is 1, 0, right? You have a carry bit, 1, 0. So this bit is 0, but you have a 1 carry over, and there's a 1, another, you will have a 0, okay? And 1, 1, you have another 1 carry over, right? Plus with this one will be 0, okay? And then you promote the 1 as an additional bit, right? Okay. But you only allow, let's say, 4 bits, right? In relative 16 bits, you will carry this around, okay? Which means this 1 will be summed to the lowest significant bit, okay? And then you will have, this is 0, this is 1. Okay, so finally you will have a one's complement result is 0, 0, 1, 0. Okay, you should be able to compute this, right? Again, one's complement is not a particular concept in this course, but in case you don't know, we include this slide so that you should be able to compute it. Let's say we have three, three like a bit bytes, right? So and how you compute their one's complement, you should know that. Okay. In general, in the TCP, actually we flip the bits again, okay? Because when you flip them, right, and then you compute the one's complement with the other content, right, and then you sum that with the checksum, you should get all 1 bits. Okay. If you get some bits as 0, that means the packet is wrong. Okay. But here in the exam, actually, we don't ask you to flip the bits. It's just to tell you how this checksum comes. In the exam, we ask you to compute the one's complement for, let's say, 3 numbers. Okay. Next is congestion control. Right? So flow control is one of the TCP's components. The next is congestion control. So we take the main of advertised window for flow control and also the congestion window. Right? And I think you should know this concept. Right? So you can only send so much from your last byte of knowledge, depending on the window size. Right? Okay. And in congestion control, we have 2 phases. The first is called a slow start, where we double the window size in each round trip time. Okay. And the second is called a congestion avoidance. Right? We add the window size by 1 divided by the window size. Okay, let's take a look at this. Okay. If you have 1 round trip time, and then you get acknowledgement, you increase by 1, 2, right? Then you can send 2, and you plus 2 become 4. Then you send back, and you get 4 acknowledgement, become 8. So each round trip time, you double the window size. Okay, keep that in mind. But when you get to the slow start threshold, SS threshold, okay, above that you should back off. Okay, then you have the congestion avoidance. So each time you just add a window size by, let me see whether we have this. Add a window size by 1 divided by the window size. So that when you get 8 acknowledgement, right, you actually add only 1. Okay, next time you send by 9. So this becomes a linear curve. Okay, keeps that in mind. Okay, initially it's doubling, and then you linear after each time step. Okay, each time step is round trip time. Okay, so you need to know this, right? So what if we ask you a question? Hey, whenever you get acknowledgement, you always add 1. Right? So this is wrong because in congestion avoidance stage you add 1 divided by window size. Okay. Any questions? All right, let's continue. So here we have a big picture of the scenario. You need to know, hey, this is slow start, and then we have linear. We have timeout, and we will get down, right? And then we slow start again, and then we can increase a little bit. We have control. This should be 45 degrees, by the way. Okay, it's because the window size, the time, right, is linear, 45 degrees. Okay, each round trip time you increase the window by 1. Okay, here the degree is a little bit smaller. Right? So in reality, it should be 45, and you will have this slow start. So this is actually, not good because you always hammer down your window size to 1 while you have timeout. Okay, so this is a TCP Tahoe, right? So we also have a TP3 Reno, which allows so-called fast retransmit. So you need to know that when do we retransmit? This is when we get 3 duplicate ECKs, right? So for example, 4 is last, right? So we acknowledge 4, 4, 4, which means everything before 4 is okay. Right, so now we already have a 4, then we get the first duplicate 4, second duplicate ECK 4, third duplicate ECK 4, right? We say, hey, now we should retransmit without waiting for timeout, okay? Without waiting for timeout. And so we may ask you a question, how many retransmit we will have before you do fast retransmission, right? You need to know that it's 3 duplicate ECKs, or without, counting this one which is the original one, then you have 4 ECKs, right? So you need to be aware of that. Why don't we just retransmit by the first ECK, duplicate ECK? This is because maybe sometimes you have an out of order packet, which means 5 arrive first, but then 4 immediately arrives. Okay, right? So then you should not, you should wait a while. The receiver wait for a while, and pretty sure you get so many confirmation that 4 is not received, then you retransmit. Okay, and so TCP Reno. Why we call it fast recovery? Because we will hammer down the SS threshold to half the window size. We will not cut the window size directly to 1. Okay, let's take a look at the example. Right? So here we do faster transmission. Then we have timeout. We hammer down to 2. But if you are hammered down the window size to 1 because of the timeout, you always have. But sometimes it's because we lost a packet, right? But we don't need to. This will be trigger the 3 duplicate, right? Other SDKs, which means there's still some packets received. It's just that this packet is lost. We will do fast retransmit. We hammer down to half of the original window size, okay, cut by half. We don't need to go back to the 0, okay? And then we have timeout. Okay. So this is the fast retransmit stage, okay? And it's much more efficient. You don't have to waste these bandwidth, okay? And in the exam, we have some calculation question for you. For example, if we assume that it's always, we don't even have a, so this is a very ideal case, right? So it's a very toy example. Okay. Let's say you increase, right, and then to W, and suddenly there's a packet loss, you hammer down to here, and increase, and then 1 packet loss, you come down here, right? So what will be the number? Right. So for example, we can ask you what's the average throughput, right? The average throughput is you know, it's in the middle of these 2 lines, okay? Right. It's here. Right. Let me change it. It's here. Right. You can think about, hey, these are effective bandwidth filled to here, okay? Then it's like a flat. Right. So on average, it's you know, this number I will do to compute. Okay, this is the middle point. Okay. Right. So I have a question in chat. Yeah, the answer is correct. Okay, so yeah. So then we have another question. What's the job rate, right? So then the job rate, as we discussed last time, you need to know that each round trip time you increase by 1. Okay, and each round time you increase by 1 because this is congestion avoidance. Okay, so this is 45 degrees. You need to know this, right? Okay, if you keep this in mind, then you know that let's consider the loss rate in each period, right? So this is repeated, so you just need to compute 1 period. Okay, so here you have how many? This time you have W by 2 packets. Okay, so then this time you have W by 2 plus 1 plus 2 all the way to plus W, right? And among so many, so this is easy to compute, right? So A plus 1, A plus 2, A plus all the way to B, right? You know the formula to compute it. Right? And then by this time you have 1 packet loss, right? So it's 1 divided by the summation. Okay, and what's the number I will leave you to calculate, right? So you should be able to calculate such simple things. This is a job rate, right? Among so many packets in the period, you lose just 1, okay? Again, we will not ask you to do the steps. We will just give you some answers and you will choose from the answers after calculation because we want to auto-grade. Right, next is TCP in the real world, right? So you need to know that these are early versions, right? So for Windows, we have a compound TCP, okay, where we use a latency as a delay based, okay, beside the loss base. And in Linux, we have the TCP qubit. But keep in mind, this is you need to memorize this. Okay, let's say we ask you a question, for example, hey, on Linux we are using compound TCP. If it's true or false question, you should say false. Right? In Linux we are using TCP qubit. Okay, and we may ask a question the other way around also. Okay? And so the next is you know, first in first out. You know, queue with drop tail, right? So this is our regular route. You know, not router-aided congestion control. So what will happen is you can have some stream coming up and then drop, okay? And this will cause unfairness, like the green flow will not send anything, while the blue flow is occupying everything, okay? So this is having a lot of problems, okay? So here you can see there's a fairness problem, and there's also a synchronized like hammer down the bandwidth, okay? So then, you know, when all of the flows are reducing the bandwidth by half and it's still increasing initially when you increase the bandwidth width. Okay, so that's why we have the RAD. So the RAD is a random early detection method. Okay, so we are using the RAD. So you need to know what is RAD, right? So this is the random early detection. Okay, and we drop the buffer. Okay, so because we covered that quite a long time ago, so it's again a smoothing. Okay, you need to be aware, just like a round trip time estimation. And below mean, we will always take it in Q. Larger than max, we always drop it. But in between, we have a linear increasing probability of dropping. Keep that in mind. And here's an example. Right? So because of time, I will quickly go. Right? So here you will randomly drop it. and then you will find it's more balanced, right? And there's like no synchronized hammer down the bandwidth. Okay, so let's take a relative fast. Okay? So this does not solve all the problem because maybe other streams are not tightly backed up, because the utilization of the network by half, right? Because it's running UDP. I just keep sending. I'm not following TCP's flow control. And then your router needs to do some additional stuff to help, right? So don't let the UDP guy abuse. Right? You need to drop the UDP's packets, but keep other people, like TCP connections, packet flow. Okay? So for doing that, you need the FIFO method. Right? So, and this follows so-called max-min fairness, right? And I will leave it to you to take a look at it. But keep in mind how this is calculated, because we will have a more complex scenario than this. Okay. So initially, let's say you can only send, you have 3 streams, right? The sum of larger than 10, but you can only support 10 bandwidth, okay? So how do you have the max min fairness, right? So the solution is, you think about what's the average among these 3 flows. Firstly, we have 3 flows, right? And we have 10, so average is 3.33, okay? And then you look at how many flows are below this average, right? You should certify them, okay? They are acting less than they should, okay? Then R is 2, okay? After satisfying this link, this stream flow, we still have how many? We have 2. And then what's the remaining bandwidth? It's 8, right? 8 bandwidth shared by these 2, right? Each should use 4, okay? Each should use 4. And keep in mind, this is a recursive process, okay? So I'm not sure whether, in our exam, we will ask you to do a recursive process, okay? We will have another example where you need to do 1 recursion at least, okay? The reason is, for example, what if for the remaining 2, right? So the remaining 2, if you have 8, if you remember, we have 2 streams. If you divide by 2, right? 8 by 2 is 4, and you have some stream less than 4, right? Then again you should certify all the flow of that, and then you have the remaining 1 divided again. So this is a recursive process, and you will see that clustering is done. And be sure you know how to calculate these things, right? Okay, then in reality, we actually cannot guarantee the bit-by-bit guarantee, right? So we have the CSFQ algorithm. Okay, you need to, so this I will leave to you, right? So you, for the, edge router, you can directly get the receiving speed, and you can compute the mean RF. But in the core router, you don't want to maintain the states, right? So you use some trick, right? If you remember our trick. You have a probability P to drop a stream if it's 1, if and the receiving speed is actually embedded into the packet if you screw it. Okay? And the egress router need to remove this R speed. Okay? Again, so just a hint that you need to look into those things. Okay? Let me see the time, whether we, yeah, we are running out of the time. Let me see how many slides we still have. Okay, we might go a little, maybe 5 minutes beyond. Okay, I hope you will stay with me. Otherwise, you can watch the video. And so DNS, right? So DNS application level, right? So DNS, you need to know there's a hierarchy, right? So like the top level domain is edu for you, this domain name, right? And UAB is the second level, right? So this level, okay? And www is so this is the web server. Right? You can also have the mail server, mail or UAB. Okay. So this is a top level domain. You need to know this. Right? And so there's order you need to be aware of that. And we have a local name server concept. Right? So whatever you do, you first contact your local name server. Okay. Then your local name server will try to reach the so-called authority name server for the destination. Okay, something like this. And the entire process is using a so-called iterated DNS code. So you will contact your local name server. The local name server, depending on whether it's cached, they will contact the root, and the root tell you to contact the COM, right? And the COM, and you go to COM, and they contact back, and then you find, hey, there's a Google domain name server, and then Google name server knows where the IP is, right? And will get back to you, and then you can get back to your host and the connection step, right? So you need to be aware of this process. And there's a caching, right? So you don't want to contact you want to cache, right, for a while. There's a time to live, right? Until the cache is outdated, you will pull the most up-to-date data. So that's why your website, when it's up, it takes some time to reach everyone. Okay, So you need to be aware of this. And we have different DNS types, right? So like A is for address for IPv4, and AAA is for IPv6. So when you have the domain name, what's the IP address? And another type, so this is IP address, is called a name server. Right? So the name server, name of the DNS server for this domain, right? You give the domain, it asks you to contact who, right? Okay. And you also have the canonical name because you can have an alias, right? So you have multiple host names. And it will tell you, hey, the canonical one is this one, okay? Just check for its IP address, right? And you will also have the mail, right? Canonical of the mail server, right? www is for this like a domain name, right? Web server, okay? And mail server is using the MX record, okay? You keep in mind the MX record. If you ever try a domain name, you purchase a domain name, you want to configure a mail server, you need to configure the MX record, okay? Keep that in mind. This is mail domain name, okay? And you also have the reverse IP lookup, right? So you can, previously we say, hey, if I give a domain name, where's the IP address I want to contact, right? You can do the reverse, right? This is called a PTR pointer, right? So it's a PTR record is giving the IP address, okay? You want to get the domain name. Sometimes you need it. And then you need to know the DNSSEC, right? So this is for security because, you know, if you connect to some destination like Bank of America, you don't want to the URL, the IP address to be a malicious IP address. Right? How do you guarantee that? You can use a DNSSEC protocol. Right? It has a public key that you can use to verify the signature. Okay, and then if you are not a so BOA is signed by ICANN, right? So then you check the COM whether it's signed by ICANN. Okay, so this is DNSSEC. Okay, then if you have all the chain all the way to ICANN, you know it's signed, so it's certified. You need to know at least the name of DNSSEC and be able to find it, right? So in our answer, or you fill in the blank. Yeah, so if the malicious user somewhere, it will break. But if it's not here, then maybe the COM is a malicious one, so it will not be signed. Okay, and you need to know the terminology of port forward. Right? So if you contact elsewhere, two people are contacting the server, right? And we will have a mapping using the port. Assign different port number. Right? So here, even though they are sharing the same IP address because they are in the same NAT, but they are in different port number. And whenever packet goes out, it will be replaced to this. Okay. When the packet gets in, you will look up the table and replace with this, and you can route to this. You need to know the port forwarding concept of NAT. And finally, you need to know that there are two hole puncturing methods if both of them are behind NAT. Right? So you need to have a third party to help you. So there are two protocols, one called STUN, one is TURN. So STUN is just for service for requesting your own IP address. Okay? This TURN is more complicated. You need to both to like a route, right? You route through the TURN server to the other side. So the other side knows the public IP address, can send that. Okay. Right. So that's all for the review slides. Yeah. So we didn't pass too many times. Okay. Thank you. And any questions? So vast majority of the questions will be already in this slide. Okay, so be sure that you study this slide carefully. Okay. Yeah, I can say vast majority. Okay. At least 95% will be from this slide. Okay. And be sure to have a piece of scratch paper with you during the exam, right? So we are asking fill in the result, but the calculation, you need to have a scratch paper, right? And then find the result that you calculated in the options. Okay. So we have significantly narrowed down the scope, right? So be sure just because I know everyone has so many exams in the final, so we have a walkthrough of the key ideas to take care of. You know how important because you have the midterm, right? So if you prepare for that slide and you don't, you know the difference. Before the final, we have way more questions. Okay, we have 30-some questions, so only 2 hours. Make sure you go over the slide and have a better understanding. At least you can quickly finish maybe 80% of the questions. For some calculation questions, we need to spend a little bit more time. All right, any questions? Okay, another reminder, okay, the final exam will be fully auto-graded. Okay, make sure you choose like some terminology we hint to you. Let's say, don't pay attention to the uppercase, lowercase. Okay, just copy and paste if you have some option for you to fill in the blank. Okay, and don't add quotations. Okay, so quotation means you can fill these things, but we don't ask you to fill in. It will be fully automated grading. Okay, but if you really have some problem, just send me email over the weekend. We can fix that. Okay, but try to be accurate. Okay, so just according to instructions. Don't use casual input because this will cause misgrading. All right, so if you have no more questions, I hope everyone will have a good luck and in the final exams. Okay, have a nice weekend, and I will upload this video today.
Hey, Professor, did you say what day that the people that graduate, what day is our exam going to be on? I sent you an email, but I hadn't got a response yet.
Oh, yeah, there's a commencement, right? So on Friday, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we have, because of this reason, we have changed the. So basically, it's like this, right? So you can have the quiz anytime on Thursday and Friday. Okay, Thursday and Friday.
Okay.
Yeah, but once you start, okay, once you start, let's say Thursday 2 p.m. I start, right? It will be ending in 4 p.m. Okay, you cannot continue here. Okay, so pick your anytime you can start, but once you start, it will count for 2 hours. Is that clear?
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I
yes.
hope
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. So you will be able to access starting from Thursday, and make sure you know there's a 2 hours. Make sure you don't go beyond. Let's say 11 p.m. on Friday, then you only have 1 hour to finish this, right?
Right. Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so I will disconnect. If you have any questions, feel free to send me email. Have a great summer also. Right, so good luck with all your exams. Oh, by the way, so if you haven't done the idea survey, please try to help us. Okay, so we have really low rate of response. Okay, greatly appreciated. Thank you.